Welcome, lawmakers, congressmen, and voters, to today's informational panel about fracking. My name is Natalia McDonald, and I'm a reporter at CNN, and I will be moderating today's panel. To start off with some ground lines for the audience and our panelists. For the first question, panelists, you will have 1 minute to answer. For your second question, you will have 3 minutes to answer. Panelists, please respect each other and do not interrupt. And audience, please hold all your questions until the end. We will have time for questions at the end. Okay, I'm going to introduce our panelists. This is Lucas Montes. He's an offshore drilling engineer for Baker Hughes. This is Barbara Cato. She's a geologist. She's the chairperson for the Texas Board of Professional Geologists. This is Melanie Dobich. She's the manager of the International Fracking Organization. This is Barbara Palm, who's the land law examiner for the Bureau of Land Management. And this is Faraji Petty, who's an environmentalist at Blueprint Earth Organization. Okay, so to start off with our first question, we're going to start off with Lucas. You have 1 minute to answer. What is your stance on fracking?
Hi, good afternoon everyone. My name is Lucas and I am for fracking. The reason being is that fracking is such a new technology to be used, specifically the name hydraulic fracking. And I support this stance on fracking due to the fact that with this new technology, we have the US and the rest of the world has never had such a capability of extracting natural gas and oil from the ground. And I believe that with this new technology, we can have reserves for the next 100 years for the US. And I believe that this is the correct way, and that I believe this technology is going to benefit us for right now until new technologies appear.
Thank you, Lucas. Okay, Barbara, what is your stance on fracking?
Hello, my name is Barbara and I support fracking primarily because as a geologist, I understand the science behind the process. It is well regulated and highly researched, so it's not unusual for people to fear something that they don't understand. In our case, we found that a lot of the speculation behind fracking is actually false, that the scientific evidence doesn't identify fracking as the primary cause of contamination. And for that reason, I support fracking.
Thank you. And Melanie, what is your stance on fracking?
Hello, my name is Melanie and my stance is neutral. On the one hand, fracking allows countries to get less dependent of the gas delivery from other countries. But on the other hand, fracking could lead to political problems like massive protests against fracking.
Thank you. And Barbara, what is your stance on fracking?
Hello, I'm Barbara, and I am against fracking because of the several negative effects that it has on the economy. For one thing, it creates problems with the infrastructure of cities. For another thing, it also creates false job prospects, and it also creates a long-term poor economic prospects for communities.
Thank you. And Faraji, what is your stance on fracking?
Hi, my name is Raji and I'm against fracking. I'm against fracking for various reasons. It's very harmful to the environment. It uses tons of fresh water. That fresh water is contaminated with tons of chemicals, as well as fracking leads to earthquakes and air pollution.
Thank you. And for our next set of questions, you guys have 3 minutes to answer. So starting off with Barbara, how does fracking impact the environment?
In order to explain how it impacts the environment, we would have to start by explaining the process. So fracking is the use of high-pressured water to penetrate rock and the Earth's surface to reach resources that are located sometimes beyond a mile underneath the surface of the Earth that you and I see. In that process, minerals, gases are released, and it's not always harmful as those minerals and gases are regularly occurring in our daily lives. As I said before, it is a well-regulated process. The EPA has taken many years to examine the process before allowing fracking to become what it is today. So there are tens of thousands of wells in Colorado alone, and the governor of Colorado actually confirmed that of those tens of thousands of wells, none of them have been identified as the sole cause of any type of pollutant or contamination. The Federal Regulating Board has also approved fracking and as a safe means of excavating, or I guess pulling the oil out of the earth. It is not a cause of earthquakes, as most people do speculate. The seismic activity is actually 10,000 to 1 million times less than a 3.0 magnitude earthquake. Scientists are very transparent in our activity when doing any type of scientific research on the earth, as we also have vested interest in protecting it and making sure we also have a safe place to live. So we work with local water planning because of the mass amounts of water that is used for fracking. So we want to ensure that people have what they need and the resources are available to communities. For these reasons, I support fracking.
Thank you. And Faraji, how does fracking impact the environment?
Well, fracking impacts the environment in various ways. First off, fracking requires 1 to 8 million gallons of water just to begin the process. And before they start drilling the water down, they have to mix it with sand as well as 40,000 chemicals. Some of those chemicals include formaldehyde, mercury, carcinogens, leads, and others. When this mixture is drilled down into the earth, it sometimes can leak out into drinking wells that are in nearby towns and cities, and those people in those towns can drink that water and become sick, and that can lead to cancer, neuro damage, respiratory problems such as asthma, and other problems. Methane is also used in the process, and methane, when methane is released into the air, into the atmosphere, it's 25 times dangerous than carbon dioxide when it is released, as well as it can cause acid rain and ground level ozone damage. Fracking also causes earthquakes because it is drilled 10,000 feet into the ground, and these earthquakes can disturb houses that are in nearby towns and cities, and that can lead people to suing those oil companies that use fracking.
Thank you. And our next question is for Lucas, and it is, how does fracking impact the economy?
Well, as I said, the U.S. and Canada have a lot of natural gas and oil stored underneath the ground, and in order to just extract that, you need the new technologies that we have, and that's include hydraulic fracking. Anyways, how it impacts it economically? Well, according to the BBC Journal, as a matter of fact, the U.S. and Canada have stored over, for the current consumption that they have right now, they have over around 100 years of natural gas and oil they could use with the current technology that they have and they could extract. This causes them to be leading them into more of an independent energy source instead of them relying on foreign countries such as Russia, the Middle East, or South or Latin America. And this is very good for the U.S. because this takes away takes away the OPEC's grip on foreign countries that depend on oil and gas, and the U.S. and Canada have a huge head start, have a huge advantage on it. One of the other reasons that it also hydraulic fracking is pretty good for the communities is that it also brings jobs. In order to build a hydraulic fracking well, you need engineers, you need construction workers, you need contractors, subcontractors, transportation, etc. Now, this is an increase to population, and when you bring population and money into a place, well, people come in, and those areas, they're going to need, like I said, movie theaters. You're going to need entertainment services, etc. And with that, services come in and improve the local area, thus increases the overall general wealth for everybody. And for one of my last reasons though is that with this new technology though, more and more people are getting to learn to use this technology. technology, and it's not only going to be limited just to U.S. and Canada, like hydraulic fracking. It's being used everywhere else, and this is a very good thing because it is, like Barbara mentioned, it is hydraulic fracking. It's a new technology that could be used, and it's very potential in order to like penetrate rock and not just go offshore oil drilling, and can just go horizontally and drill. And that is why I'm for hydraulic fracking.
Thank you, Lucas. And Barbara, how does fracking impact the economy?
Well, for starters, the truck traffic it takes to deliver water to a single fracking well causes as much damage to roads as roughly 3.5 million car trips. And this damage to the roads is very costly to repair. Also, since fracking does require very large amounts of water, lots of counties that do fracking need to create new water infrastructure to support this, and this is especially difficult in drier counties. And another thing is that, according to the Environment New York Research and Policy Center, costs of cleaning up contaminated water and paying for the destruction of roads, as well as plugging orphaned wells, often falls on the public and not the oil industry. And the public may experience these costs for decades to come, not just while fracking is going on. Another thing that fracking does is it can have an effect on property values negatively. First of all, like if a home is worth $250,000 or more and it is located within 1,000 feet of a fracking well, the property value can decrease anywhere from 3 to 14%. And this is not good for property owners. And also, some may think that fracking creates a lot of jobs, but the reality is that 70% of jobs created are given to government workers who travel with the oil company, and only 30% are given to locals. And these jobs that are given to locals are often low paid and part-time and low skill. And also, some may also think that fracking, it brings in money for years, but this is also not necessarily true. Fracking actually brings in the most money and the most oil within the first year. So therefore, this creates a boom-bust system where costs are accumulated during the boom that must be paid for during the bust. And like I mentioned before, a lot of times the taxpayer is responsible for this. And so, according to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, economies that once had thriving industries often suffer the highest rates of poverty because of this.
Thank you, Barbara. You're out of time on that answer. And Melanie, how do other countries treat fracking?
Well, like Lucas mentioned, a lot of other countries use fracking. The reasons behind this are different. Some countries use fracking in order to get less dependent of the gas delivery from other countries, like for example Poland. According to CESBU, 80% of Poland's gas demand is covered through imports from Russia. By using fracking, Poland tries to get an energy mix and get less dependent on the gas delivery from Russia. Furthermore, they hope that through fracking they can decrease the energy prices, which boost their economy and also the welfare of the country. Poland's prime minister is even criticizing other EU countries that they don't explore their own shale gas reserves and stay economically and especially politically dependent on Russia. But these countries have reasons why they don't use fracking, like for example, legal and political circumstances. According to Patel and Baksh, a lot of countries have laws that say that the gas and the oil in the ground is not owned by the landowner, but by the state. And this could explain why people are against fracking, because they don't have any direct advantages but they feel the risks. Nationwide protests in France and Bulgaria led to a completely ban of fracking. In other countries like Germany, Tunisia and South Africa, fracking was temporarily banned through a moratorium. Furthermore, political parties with a focus on the environment have seats in parliament, and this empowers them to make the allowance of fracking even more difficult. So, to sum up, my stance is neutral. I've provided you reasons why other countries use fracking in order to get less dependent of the gas delivery to other countries, and reasons why other countries don't use fracking because of the political difficulties like having massive protests.
Thank you, Melanie. And just to recap all the positions by our panelists, this is Lucas, who is for fracking because of the job creation and economic boom. This is Barbara Cato, who is for fracking because of the efficiency to extract necessary resources. This is Melanie, who is neutral towards fracking. She provided evidence that fracking allows countries to become more independent of other countries, but also can lead to protests. This is Barbara Palm, who is against fracking due to the destruction of infrastructure and poor prospects for communities. And this is Faraji, who is also against fracking because of the negative impacts on the environment, such as earthquakes. Thank you, panelists, for presenting today, and thank you, audience, for coming out today. Does anybody have any questions?
How does fracking cause earthquakes?
Okay, I'm going to give that one to Faraji, and that is, how does fracking cause earthquakes?
Well, like I said before, the pipe is drilled down about 10,000 feet into the Earth's crust, and this mixture is shot down at a very high pressure, which disturbs the earth layers. And every year, about 40 incidents of earthquakes is reported due to fracking, and it's increasing every year. And so many people's houses get damaged by these earthquakes due to fracking, and they have to seek to suing the oil companies just to be able to get their houses fixed.
Thank you. And yes,
Why are countries so politically dependent on Russia?
I'm going to direct this one to Melanie. Why are countries so politically dependent on Russia? You have a minute and 30 seconds.
Well, large parts of Europe's energy consumption is covered through imports from Russia. Like, for example, Finland and Bulgaria get all the gas from Russia. Other countries like Germany covers 40% of their gas demand through imports from Russia. And this is the reason why Poland's prime minister is criticizing them, because he says, guys, you have your own shale gas reserves, use them and get independent from Russia. Because when Russia marched into Ukraine, for example, it took the EU so long to impose any sanctions on them, and the sanctions were not really existent, like travel restrictions or stuff like that. And the reasons behind this is because the EU countries fear that Russia could answer to the sanctions by decreasing the amount of the gas delivery, which will increase the gas price, then the economy will suffer, and the people will suffer, and this is bad for the next elections. So this is why the politicians don't want to impose sanctions on Russia.
Thank you. And we have time for one more question.
How are the taxes that are being collected from fracking used?
I'm going to direct this one to Lucas. How are the taxes that are collected from fracking used?
Well, I'm just going to use the U.S. example because I don't know how it's with different countries. But anyways, in the U.S., basically, when there's a new fracking rig like being set up and developed, though, it's a very taxable source. Like they just get like wherever county or the place they're like drilling, people tend to tax that area rather than the people. So the area gets all their taxes instead of from the people, instead of then paying out of their pockets. The fracking well actually pays for it because of the amount of gas or oil that it produces. And with those taxes, it can be used to pay schools, it can be used to repair roads, build new infrastructure, build new parks, etc. Thanks to the money that is taken from fracking.
Thank you. And thanks again to our panelists, and thank you again, audience, for coming out. This concludes our panel.